everyone, it's Teresa. I have some fun thrift flips for you today, and they're all spring, and it's part of a playlist, and we're gonna go ahead and jump in right now. So I know these are not thrifted, but these are some Dollar Tree little bird houses, and I needed them, so we are going to take those and some spindles. That's the thrifted part, and I am going to just take some Starbond glue and glue those all right down to those little wood rounds. Those are actually off of a little broken piece of furniture that I'd gotten from a place up in Savannah, so they're kind of thrifted in a way. I actually just sliced it, made little slices of it using my miter saw, and the editing on this video might be a little bit rough. My computer had to go in to get fixed, and then I tried to do most of it on my phone, and now I've got my computer back, but I was like, well, I just don't have the time to go through and edit it again, so just hopefully you guys will work with me on some of this. So I'm adding my Starbond glue onto the bottom of each one of those spindles. Those came off of a chair. I think I spent maybe $3.99 for the chair. So I was pretty happy about that. I've got a whole bunch of spindles and stuff from the chair. I think I bought 2 chairs, and they're just full of spindles. It's one of those like good old-fashioned 90s style kitchen tables. So absolutely perfect for this kind of project. But I am adding my Starbond glue and then spraying a little bit of the accelerator, and it's going to be just perfect. I wanted it to be a little bit more secure than it would have been with just hot glue. And as you can see, I've painted all of my little bird houses, and now we're going to go through the same process of putting them on the actual spindle itself. I painted the bird houses in some pretty nice spring colors. The green one I believe is Shadow Sage, Nantucket Blue, and Maize. And then I did all of the spindles in Waverly Chalk Paint in Plaster, if I remember right. And now that they're attached, we're going to do a little bit of wet distressing because there is a pretty color, a pretty like brown, wood stain underneath on all of these pieces. So I started with a baby wipe, and then I was like, okay, this just isn't going as fast as I want it to. I let it dry completely. If you're trying to wet distress, it's a lot easier if you do it when it's mostly kind of, maybe not wet because you have to handle it, but just barely dry essentially. If you can do it while it's wet, all the better. It's going to be a lot easier. So I go through and try to get a little bit of wet distressing down, and then I was like, okay, eventually here, I'm going to give up on it. Yep, right there. I was like, yeah, we're just going to go in with a good old antique wax. So this is the Folk Art Antique Wax. It is pretty runny in consistency, so it kind of just depends on what kind of wax you have. You can use all kinds of different things. And what's nice as you're going, if you do a little bit too much, you can always wipe it off with a baby wipe. It is, I believe, like a water-based wax as well. So with it being so watery, you can get away with wiping it off if you move pretty quickly, or even if it dries, it'll just be a little smudgy, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. But anyways, I'm going to just go through and add my antique wax to both the spindle part, the base, and the birdhouse, because you can't just do it in one spot. You got to just go through the whole thing. See, it's just like, this just needs to be, waxed up because it's just the way it is, right? I think the spring colors are super cute with this distressing. If distressing isn't your thing, you can obviously skip this part. I would make sure your paint colors are a little bit more opaque. On this one, it's not quite as dark as I would have made it had I figured I was leaving it alone, I guess I should say. And I think I had thought about it too, but I didn't make it. There's really cute little IOD molds. I thought about adding some little birds to it. Maybe down the line I'll do that, but I thought that would have been super cute too. I just didn't get a chance to do it. And here is how they turned out. Super cute. And today, like I mentioned, is part of a collab, Refurbished Love for Spring. Our host is Buffy and Lon. I'll have their channels as well as the playlist listed for you below. Now I'm going to get back to our DIYs. I have this box. Now this guy has been sitting around in my house for a while. So while technically it is not thrifted, it is kind of in the same idea. You could just kind of take the stuff you got at home and thrift it yourself. I did that Shadow Sage. I believe I did about 2 coats to get a little bit more opacity. And now I am taking a baby wipe. This one does kind of do a lot better with pulling off of that paint. I did it as the paint was still pretty damp. You can even see some spots on the bottom where it's still pretty wet. So just be careful you don't get paint all over yourself when you're doing that if it's still really wet. But you just take the baby wipe and you just kind of rub it onto the different spots where you want to take off your paint. I thought I would be kind of just going into a lot of the edges and maybe a little spots here and there, just kind of wherever it pulled up the paint. I thought that would just give it a really cool effect, and I'm really happy with the result. If your baby wipe starts to get dry, you can always switch out to a new one or add just a little spritz of water. I switched out a new one because that one was pretty full of the paint and I thought it needed a little more wet, so I sprayed it down with just a little spray bottle. And I will continue to do this to the entire box. And like I said, the editing might be a little bit rougher than normal. It's going to be a little longer than normal. But now I've got my computer back, so the next video you see should be, full regular editing. And like I said, I'm working through this one. Now, what I will let you know, I have actually got a little renovation kind of planned in my craft room. So my next video, it'll be a little bit of time. It'll be just around like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks before the next one comes out. So I'm taking some IOD stamps. These are the ones that are called Sprigs, and the IOD ink pad ink in the color black. That's a lot to say. And I'm just going to take that and really kind of work it in on a few different spots. The Sprigs stamp that comes from IOD, it has a lot of variety of different, pieces, which is one of the things I really love about it. So I'm just going to take a lot of different pieces and kind of start working it around. Now, when I'm doing my stamping on the back, it comes like on a backer, like you can see there. It's a little harder of a plastic. It's not like completely firm. It's a little flimsy, but I just cut around the stamp and leave it on the backer to give you a little bit more control. If you have one of those acrylic blocks, that'll work too, but some of these stamps are really big, so it just kind of depends on what you've got in your stash, what you work with. I think that this works just fine though. And I'm going to just kind of go around and add all of these little details, just adding little pieces of it, parts here, like that one I didn't get the full thing in there. So just kind of go until you feel pretty happy with it. Like I said, this is a lot slower than you normally see, but it I guess it's a little different, right? And I even like to kind of layer them one on top of the other. I think that kind of adds a little bit more depth and dimension to your pieces. And then I'll swap it around and do the sides and the other end, just because I think that it's just a lot of fun. All right, so once you've gotten all the stamps down and they're pretty dry, I'm going to take a sanding block on kind of the more fine grit side, and I'm just going to sand down some of the ones that were a little bit darker. You could totally skip this step if you don't want to do it, but I kind of wanted it to be a little bit more faded. I thought that would look really nice, and honestly, if you end up making mistakes on your stamping where spots are way darker than other spots, like that one you see on the left, this is going to help you kind of blend it all together. See, now it looks a lot more blended. And here it is all finished up. I think this is super cute for spring, and I'm just gonna load it up with some fun stuff. Now I'm taking this plastic, yeah, it's pretty much plastic, picture frame, and I'm gonna give it a pretty full coat in this Rust-Oleum chalk paint in the color linen white, if I remember right. I did this one quite a while back. I'm using a sponge brush at first. I really don't like sponge brushes for pretty much anything. I thought this would help kind of get into those nooks and crannies in this little thing, and as soon as I started painting it, I really truly regretted my decision. I should have just spray painted it. I have another one of these that I did just spray paint straight white that I haven't shown you guys yet because I haven't done anything with it yet, but this is why I'm thinking it'd have been a lot easier just to spray paint it. So I eventually went in and did, I want to say probably like 3 coats of this paint, and there's still some spots where it's not completely covered. So I was like, well, you know what's going to happen next then. We're going to go in with some antique wax and just make it look completely and totally intentional. There's a lot of detail. I probably would have gone in with the antique wax anyways, but especially since there's a lot of splotchy spots, that's just going to make it the most sense in my mind to go in and give it a good distressing, make it look really intentional. I'll do the antique wax pretty much throughout the entire picture frame. And like I said, this is plastic, so even if it was white, you wouldn't really be able to just go over that white plastic with the antique wax. It doesn't do as well to those super slick surfaces. Like, you can get away with it, but it's not going to adhere as much as it would if you paint it. So even if you have something like a random old picture frame that's just plasticky sitting around the house, or you find one at Goodwill, think about like spray painting it or even doing a coat of chalk paint just to kind of give it a different life, make it a little bit, you know, just a new life. That's kind of what this whole playlist is all about. Just giving things new life, refurbish them, make them new, and have fun while you're doing it, right? Why not? I then decide, like, well, I want to go a little bit more in the shabby chic direction. So I take some of this gold paint. This one is from Folk Art, and I'm just going to go through it and kind of give it a nice little bit of like a glitziness. And I'll do it the same kind of ideas that I did with the antique wax. Now, if it ends up being too much, like too bright and everything, you can always go back over the gold with the antique wax as well. It just kind of depends on what you're going for, what you like. I think that is just a lot of fun just to kind of mix in these different tones. You've got, you know, the antique wax and the gold are so different, but they make such a really fun kind of like combination. You get like this just really totally different look than what this thing looked like before. And I mean, like I said, this frame has been sitting around my house for a while. It's been sitting in like the back of a closet for legit years, like years. So while it wasn't thrifted, you could definitely find things like this in the thrift store. So don't just pass by them, even though, you know, you're like, well, it's just like a black frame. That's not really my style. You can add to it. You can make it kind of different. Well, and I really wanted to focus in on those, like all of that work up in the top. I thought those were pretty. So now I'm going to take some chalk couture transfers and I'm going to actually apply it onto the glass. So I have this gorgeous, like floral, very shabby chic transfer. I will have it linked in my link cart for you down below. If you want to check it out, I'll put all of the supplies that you need to kind of make this whole like look. And I am just going to apply it straight onto the glass. And this particular frame has like two different little pieces of glass. So I'm just kind of making sure that it lines up and everything. And when you're using it on glass, you make sure you fuzz it really well. That's what I did in the beginning with that terry cloth towel kind of looking thing. That is a fuzzing cloth. I will have that in the cart link too if you're interested in it. And you just really have to fuzz it down quite a bit because the glass surfaces, it's going to stick that transfer to it really, really well. I'm taking the colors berry mixed with a little bit of white just because I wanted it to be a little lighter. It's a really pretty like purpley pink color on its own, but when you add in the white, I think it just brings it down just a little. And then I will take, I believe, do I take eucalyptus? I want to say I take the color eucalyptus, and let me see, eventually. Like, usually this would all be edited out. You guys get the full picture today. All right, there we go. We're going to take the color eucalyptus, and then I'm going to just go in and get all of those little stems and just kind of give it obviously a very floral look. If you want to kind of keep like in with like the white and the black, you could totally do this completely in white or black and then just put a, you know, the opposite colored paper behind it when you put it back in the frame. I will be putting paper in behind these ones, and then the pieces that you'll see in a minute that I leave open, those ones will be pictures. So as you can see, it turns out really, really pretty. Now I'm going to take some IOD transfers, rub-on transfers, and I'm going to add just a little bit into a couple of little pieces. So I've got this really cute little bee, and then I've got a cute little butterfly, and then the other slots will actually end up with pictures in them eventually. I do the same thing. I put the frame over the glass. That way I can make sure I'm putting them in the right places, and then I will go ahead and take this little stick, you'll see in a second, and start to rub the transfer on, basically. I will be completely honest with you, the rub-on transfers from IOD are not my favorite. I have them, these were like the first ones that I bought, and I have to be completely honest, I probably prefer the Prima ones that I've used in the past a little bit better. Obviously I have these, I am going to use them, but that's just my personal opinion. I like their molds, I love their stamps. I actually just bought some Prima stamps and molds, so I'm going to try those out and kind of see what it is, you know, if I like those better. I might, you never know. Obviously, I'm not going to get rid of any of my IOD stuff, but it's just when, so I used one of these on a surface that was just painted, and it did not come out, it didn't come off of the transfer sheet very well, and now I'm using it on a piece of glass that was cleaned, you know, before I started, and it's just fighting me to come and actually transfer onto the glass. So if I have any IOD like experts out there, I would love to know, like, what do I need to do? I think I remember seeing something about like you need to put it in the refrigerator for like 20 minutes. I don't know. Anyways, I would have loved to have shown you a picture of it. However, I'm in the process of cleaning out my craft room to get new flooring, and I don't know where I put it. I probably have it in the garage. And man, you guys just make sure you're following me over on Instagram and check out my community tab. I'm going to show you this horrendous looking picture of my garage right now. I look like a magician because I shouldn't be able to fit all of that in this little room. But anyways, I hope you guys had a really great time today, and that you go check out the playlist and our hosts. They're going to have a lot of really great things for you to check out. And I will see you next time.